Oh my God, it's a Victory Monday. I'd forgotten what it feels like. Andy Herman here to talk some football after a big win for the Green Bay. Okay, well, I don't know about a big win, but a win. And it's been a while, so it's nice. It's nice, Andy, to be talking about a victory. I understand the Bears are not a very good team, but they're still the Bears, and I'll take it.
I will take a Bears victory every single year. If you tell me that the Packers went 2-15, I'll take those two victories against the Chicago Bears, please and thank you. So we'll never apologize for that, even in a tough season. Give me those two wins against the Chicago Bears.
100%, no doubt about it. Let's start on the defensive side of the ball this week because it really did feel like the snowball was about to start like rolling downhill after that Justin Fields touchdown run. They didn't really do a great job in that opening sequence, though they did limit them to a field goal. And then Fields comes out and rips off that big TD run, and I got to admit, for myself, it felt like, oh boy, here we go. But I mean, this is a Chicago team with Fields at quarterback that has racked up a bunch of yards and a bunch of points against the last five or so opponents that he's faced with, Fields at quarterback. Joe Barry at least righted the ship somewhat. I'm not saying he pitched a good game or anything close to that, but I was impressed at how they were able to kind of settle down a bit and at least limit what the Bears were able to do from there on out.
Yeah, I agree. And I know that everyone on the Packers is obviously extremely well-paid professionals, and you don't get any ribbons or cookies for not quitting on a season. But
although you should, you
maybe
absolutely
you should. Maybe you know what? Maybe there should be more
put it in
ribbons
their
and
locker,
cookies in football.
100%.
But this is a team that was sitting at 4-8 and not a good football team. And the season has gone every wrong way possible,
Right.
and you're down double digits to the Bears on two separate occasions on the road, windy, cold conditions. And guess what's awaiting you after this game? The nice, cozy comforts of your home and finally a bye week.
Right.
This team could have quit on multiple occasions in this game. And like it not necessarily again, not would have maybe been understandable. Like I don't think it's ever like necessarily understandable, but like we've seen it happen to other teams in the
Oh
past.
my goodness, yes.
Very much so. And they didn't. And they kept fighting through this game as they have all season. Matt LaFleur, although it's kind of become a little bit broken recordish at times, has continued to praise his team's effort through every single game, never quitting. And we saw that in this game. And I think we saw it from the defense, as you're mentioning. Things did not go according to plan to start with. They get a free rusher in Keyshawn Nixon coming right at Justin Fields on that play. Fields makes a ridiculous move on him, cuts inside. The rest was history. It's 10-0 Bears. And as you said, it's like, here we go again. It's going to be a long day in Chicago. And instead, I thought overall, not a perfect game plan, but I think playing every snap on defense or on pass defense in zone, only the second time any team's done that this season, to make sure that all eyes were on Justin Fields, probably the one player for Chicago who could actually beat you in this game, was pretty smart. He didn't really scramble much the rest of the day. Not sure how much his injuries played a part in that, but
Right.
They got out of Chicago with a win, and at times that did not look like it was going to be the case, and kudos to them for fighting through it.
It was interesting to watch the kind of journey that Jair Alexander went on in this game. Look, the second big throw that he gives up, to me, that I get it because he's literally not ready for the snap. And we've heard this before with this team about the necessary kind of jolt that they need. The idea of get out of the huddle and get lined up, something that Matt alluded to weeks ago. And
Yep.
on that second play in particular, you see Jair looking in, going, "What's the call? What the blah blah blah," and then the snap is off, and he's basically guessing, trying to jump that route, and then obviously gets beat deep. But on the first one to EQ, I do wonder if that's a case of Jair maybe being a little overconfident and or not like taking it for granted. But the fact that Mooney is down on IR, and you look at that wide receiver core, it's not like there's anybody there that's going to really scare you as a defender. You want to obviously play straight up and you want to win the rep, whatever that rep may be. But I do wonder if EQ just got the best of him in the sense of being overconfident.
I think so. And I think, with Jair, he plays an aggressive brand of football. He's not afraid to take some lunges at plays like that.
Right.
because throughout his career, he's able to turn around and get back involved in that play and make a play on it. He's not necessarily scared usually of getting beat deep by a guy because he has such great recovery speed and just instincts of where, like, if a guy starts making a move, he just makes a ridiculously quick turn. He has insanely fluid hips and he just speeds right back and gets involved in the play. I think we saw in this game a couple of times where he was just a bit over aggressive, and it's not necessarily out of his DNA again to be aggressive, but I think he just came up hard looking for that pick, wanting to make a massive play. And I'm sure to some extent for some of these guys like Kenny Clark and Jair Alexander and some of these guys who are used to winning, like they're I'm sure taking it on themselves to be like, I got to be the guy that makes the big play. I got to get a pick six. I got to get points on the board. I got to get a sack, fumble, etc. And when you start doing that, you start going outside of what you're capable of doing sometimes. And I actually thought at first glance, this game was a really rough game for Jair Alexander. As I went back and watched it, there's the two big plays. Outside of that,
I was going to say, well, I'm right there with you. Like going back and looking at it, he actually played a fairly decent game, and a game
he
that,
did.
again, his aggressiveness and his physicality really shone through in a good way on
Agreed.
a lot of these plays.
Totally agreed. And again, that's his brand of football. I actually thought that was one of the best brands of football for Jair, of being aggressive and being a little bit more physical in the run game, coming up and making a
Yes.
couple plays on the screen passes, obviously coming up with the huge, kind of game winning interception as well. So you don't get to necessarily just smooth over to like 50-yard bombs that you're giving up in coverage. I also do think to some extent, Jair is going to play. And I know it wasn't man-to-man on the plays, but he's not getting help on those plays. He's single coverage on those plays. They're going to trust Jair with a lot of that. And sometimes that's the cost of doing business. Like the guy, I don't care if it's N'Keal Harry or EQ or some guy off a practice squad. Those guys have talent too. And at some point, you're going to get the ball thrown your way and you're going to get beat because you're on an island play after play after play after play. And again, that's the cost of doing business. And one of the things, as tough as it sometimes has been in this game, giving up two huge plays with Jair, I love the fact that he's just like, whatever, I'm going to go out and play better next play, and ends up with a huge pick at the end of the game to kind of atone for all of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned Kenny Clark, and it was fascinating to me how clearly involved and physical he was early on in this game. I thought that fell away a little bit in the second half, but then it was weird because it seemed to kind of rise back up in the fourth quarter. I mean, it's really fascinating to me that the moment the calendar switches to December, suddenly there's Kenny Clark. And I'm not saying like this was his best game by any stretch of the imagination, but it was certainly better than we've seen from Kenny over the course like the last month or so.
It really was, and it was nice to see. And I know Rashawn Gary being out plays a part in this. I know he's been seeing consistently more double teams, which understandably so. Who else would you want to double team other than Kenny Clark on that defensive front right now? I know that plays a part as well. But I would argue, even despite all of that, even if you just took his reps in one-on-ones over the course of the last month or so, that was probably one of the toughest stretches of Kenny Clark's career, just because he's constantly been good throughout the course of his career. Like you just don't see him go through that. So to see him kind of come back in this game, play a more physical brand of football, reset the line of scrimmage a few times, get some tackles in the backfield. I think he drew a holding penalty, or at least if
he
not,
did. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. In the third quarter, towards the end of the third quarter. Yeah.
That's the Kenny Clark that we're used to, right? And Kenny's not quite ever been that guy that's going to be like, hey, like 15 sacks and anything like that. But he's constantly disruptive and constantly the guy that you have to be aware of. That's what we saw out of Kenny in this game, and it was definitely a breath of fresh air. Speaking of the defensive line, though, I want your take on this because I'm very intrigued. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I've ever seen a situation like Devontae Wyatt's.
It's bizarre to me.
You've got a first-round pick, someone the team obviously felt very highly on. I would say he plays what, 8 or 9 snaps?
Playing well. He played 9 snaps yesterday.
8 or 9 snaps every game. He can't get into that 10 snap. And like 3 of those 9 plays every week, like a third of his snaps are either a disruptive play, something that makes you go, oh,
resets the line of scrimmage,
resets, or like just
takes advantage of a single block. Yes.
But he can't get over 9 snaps, which I know the technique's not there. I know there's some things he needs to work on, but like, this is not a guy that gets in the game and you're like, wow, this guy looks like a bum. Like, don't play this. Like, he looks like he should play more.
What's baffling to me, and look, I know if we had Jerry Montgomery on Truth Serum, he would talk about the guy being a vet and having played so many snaps with Kenny, etc. But it's like, why is he not playing over Dean Lowry more? Like, and it's like no shade to Dean. Dean's a lunch pail guy, and he brings it, and I do not fault his effort. But man, all you got to do is turn on the tape to see the upside with Wyatt. Like, it's there for everyone to look at, but he only gets, like you mentioned, like 8 or 9 snaps a game. At what point do you say, and here's the other thing, he's an older rookie. It's not like you got some spring chicken like you did when you drafted Kenny Clark, who you knew you had boatloads of time to develop. Like, this kid, is an older rookie. Let's get him on the field, especially now. That's the other thing. Like, if the defense was firing on all cylinders and you were worried about upsetting some chemistry that was vitally important to your possible continuation in the season where your defense is really kind of dragging you along to the playoffs, I'd understand. But this season is essentially over, though I know there's still a lot of ball game left as far as never tell me the odds when it comes to playoff hopes. But this season's pretty much over, and you're still trotting Dean Lowry out there to get run over and pushed around. And it's like, can we get the kid out there and let him develop a little bit, especially over the course of this last month? I don't know, man. To me, that is a complete mystery. I hope maybe Brian gets asked about it today because,
that's a good point.
like you mentioned, he's one of their first round picks, and it is now December, and for whatever, and he's playing well when given opportunities, but he can't get on the field, and I have no idea why.
There's 3 defensive linemen on this roster that are basically going to be locks for the team next year, and that's Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Clark, and TJ Slayton.
Yep.
Play those 3 guys.
1,000%.
Those should be the 3 guys. Totally.
Slayton had a good game too.
He did really good. 4 straight weeks that I had him great in the positive. Like, and again, limited snaps as well, but like,
exactly,
he just keeps doing good stuff.
It's a mystery, but Reed and Lowry keep getting thrown out there, and I think Reed's played better these last couple of weeks, but man, I'd be throwing Slayton and Wyatt out there as much as possible.
Agreed.
That's just me. That's just something I'm into. Let's look at the offensive side of the ball. There's the biggest frustration in this game, in the sense that they score 18 points in the fourth quarter. Everyone's excited about Christian Watson. It's all very fun until you remember the first 3 quarters. And to me, the biggest frustration is, okay, we get to the fourth quarter and we score these points. Who knows what would have happened earlier in the game if they could just extend drives? And of course, I'm talking about hero ball here. I had someone come at me on Twitter this morning about, it's just a lazy take, call it hero ball. Look, if you take a calculated risk at some point in the game on 3rd and short, totally get it. Aaron's done it his whole career. I understand. But when you are continuously missing the broadside of a barn deep on 3rd and short, like 3 times, that's hero ball. That's just hero ball. And it killed this team early in this game, in the sense of, if you just pick up the first down, this is not a good defense. This is not a good football team. You can move the ball, as you've shown all day long. Just extend the drive. Stop trying to take your hero shots. Drives me insane.
I was on the radio today with Mike Heller and your guy, Billy Schmidt, and I said almost the exact same thing to a T of like, every once in a while in moderation, I love those play calls in moderation, because you very rarely get, some single high man-to-man cover
certain looks.
And a lot of the times you get them on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. And I don't mind you wanting to take a shot against that every once in a while. The issue is that everyone besides the announcer in the game is now aware that on 3rd and 1, the Packers like to go deep and take those shots and not necessarily move the ball. They're not tricking anyone anymore. Teams are well aware of it. And even if they're not, you're not hitting on those plays, as you're mentioning. And this is a team that, and we go back to just what we expected out of this team coming out of training camp. You thought that this was going to probably be more of a ball control offense, maybe a defense-led team, which obviously took a hit when Gary goes out and teams, like, the players just didn't live up to expectations. But like, at some point, move the football, give your
defense
down,
a chance, baby.
Give your defense. That's exactly
complimentary football.
Keep them off the field, complimentary football. But we've talked about this on numerous occasions, Aaron. Like, this is not a team in any phase that likes to eat its vegetables. It's like, it doesn't like to stop the run on early downs to get into 3rd and long. It doesn't like to pick up the 3rd and 1s. They'd rather take a shot down the field. It doesn't like to, do the simple stuff on special teams that can set you up. It's just like, everything's got to be like, you know what? We could have this like okay thing, but like we've got a 1 in 30 chance at doing something spectacular. Let's take
Amazing.
that 1 in 30 chance at doing something spectacular every time, because that one time it hits, it's going to be awesome.
Well, and that's the thing, right? I mean, everyone is probably howling listening to this about the shot to Watson against the Cowboys, right? That's a touchdown on 3rd and 1 where, yeah, great. And that's a straight shot. And this is my point, though. Like, you're continuously doing it in a insanely windy environment, by the way. That's the other thing. Like, every time they cut to the ref and his pants are like billowing in the wind, maybe that gives you a clue that, yeah, it's a little windy today. Possibly, maybe the deep shots aren't really going to be all that effective. But, man, you say all that, and look, you still watch Aaron Rodgers work his magic there in the 4th quarter. And the idea that, oh, yes, I understand people clamoring for Jordan Love or what have you, but it's still Aaron Rodgers' team. And that 4th quarter was a perfect example of he finally settles down and starts to – he even mentioned it. Like, there's that 3rd down right before the end of the 3rd quarter where he hits Christian Watson on 3rd down up the left sideline for a somewhat easy completion. And it seemed like from that moment on, he really settled in, just ran the offense, and lo and behold, they moved up and down the field and they scored points. That's what's kind of frustrating, in the sense that, like, when you see him operate the offense, it's like, yeah, amazing.
No, it's incredible. And that's the thing that's frustrating, right? Is like, if we saw, and we've talked about this as well, but like, if we saw for the last 3 seasons, even at times this season, where like you run the offense and it's not working, you'd be like, yeah, dude, go off. Like, go nuts, rogue, do your own thing, put your Superman cape on by all means. But like, for 3.5 years, we've basically seen this offense, when it's run effectively, run like clockwork. And it's just like, just run the offense. But
I don't know, man. I'm just a buffoon. I don't know anything. But and also I have to give a shout out to AJ Dillon.
Yes.
And I love the fact that he is trucking people these last couple weeks, because it has been a few weeks in a row now that he has just kind of come to life. And I also love his explanation of, finding out that you're a new father, giving him the strength and the attitude to go. I'm like, man, you better get it all out now, because once that baby comes, you ain't getting any sleep. And all that strength and positive energy is going to be dissipated. So take advantage of it now, young man. But AJ Dillon, I mean, just showing how valuable he is, and the sense of Aaron Jones gets nicked up. It's pretty fucking awesome to have a guy that you can turn to in AJ Dillon who can be as effective, and not just kind of between the tackles, but you saw him operating on the perimeter. You saw him catch the football and get yards after catch and knock people over. I mean, he is an absolute joy to watch when he's kind of on brand and getting the football. And that's the thing. These last couple of weeks, it's like, yeah, there's AJ Dillon getting the ball. He's a classic back, in the sense of he's an old school throwback guy who needs touches, needs carries. The more he gets it, the more effective he is. And I know that's a real tricky balance when you've got Aaron Jones, but man, I don't think you need more evidence in the last 2 weeks to show you, if you get him the ball a number like 10, 12 times, he's going to produce for you.
You get him the ball a number of times, the defense will wear down. He will not, right? Like,
exactly.
That's 1,000,000% what it is. And I've floated this hypothesis in the past. Like, I actually do think there is something to the fact of like AJ Dillon actually, and him getting the 8 or so carries actually can sometimes take away from the momentum that Aaron Jones has going. Just as he starts getting going, all of a sudden, all right, it's Dillon's time. And then like Dillon getting like his touches, like not getting enough touches, is hurt because of Aaron Jones. It almost feels like the presence of both of these guys that you want to get on the field and use both of them is almost like hurting the other one. That's where you talk about that very fine balance. But I think Jones is going to be, good with almost any touch that you give him. But AJ Dillon is definitely somebody that is a momentum-based runner, and he gets ingrained in the game. And again, it's the classic power back where those first, couple quarters might be 2 yards, 3 yards, 1 yard, 2 yards. But by the time, man, third, fourth quarter comes around, all of a sudden it's 15 yards, 20 yards, and guys getting out of the way.
I was just going to say, and to your point, like, and it's so astute, the fact that everybody on that football field on the defensive side of the ball is sick of trying to tackle him by the time the fourth quarter comes around. And he's like, yep, I could do this all day. Like, it's so fun to watch, and he's just plowing through dudes. Speaking of the running game, how did you kind of assess the job that Zach Tom did? Because it was interesting to me, for a guy who clearly got the call on Friday when Bakhtiari goes down with an appendectomy of all things. I thought early in the game he was a little shaky. And then as the game went on, you could really see him settle in. And I don't think it was teaching tape or anything, but I thought you really saw him improve as the game went on.
Yeah, I really like Zach Tom. And I think if you were to adjust his Madden sliders or look at him, right?
Right.
His strength is just not quite there yet. He needs
Yep.
to put on some physicality. He's not a mauler in the run game by any means. He just needs to add some functional strength. But some of the other things in his slide, the awareness is way up, and just his agility, his footwork, like all the other sliders are maybe not maxed out, but they're pretty darn impressive. And I think the thing that, just his football IQ, his ability to pick up twists and stunts that we saw from training camp right away, like he just doesn't panic in those situations. Again, his footwork, where he places his hands, like the guy just knows how to play offensive line. You add that with some of the agility and the quickness that he has. Like, I just think he's a really fun player to watch. And man, if he can just get a little bit more functional strength from year 1 to year 2, I think they have a long-term starter on their hands. I'm very excited about him.
Totally agree. And I'm fascinated to see how this offseason plays out, say, when they come back and see if they find a spot for him. You know what I mean? Because we've seen him bounce around kind of all season. I mean, going way back to camp.
Yep.
I'd love to see him kind of take ownership, be given a spot and get to take ownership of it because, like you said, he's fun to watch.
Gut feel, what do you think his best position is?
Honestly, either tackle, and I don't know that there's an obvious opening for him there. And that's kind of the problem, right? I get him at guard because you look at him and he looks naturally like a guard because he's on the shorter side. But I think he's a better tackle. But I don't know that he's ready to he's obviously not going to displace Bakhtiari if Bakhtiari's back. And I don't know that he's ready to displace Nyman either.
No,
so but a lot can happen in a year. I mean, who knows? Come back next season. Who knows what the summer looks like? But yeah, I think tackle. What do you think?
Left tackle. I think he looks the most natural at left tackle. I would be intrigued. I don't think they'll do this because I don't think they'll move Myers, but I would be a little intrigued at what he could do at center.
Right.
That would be semi-interesting to me, but left guard, I think there's a possibility too, but to me, he's looked the most natural at left tackle. And inside he can get bull rushed a little bit more, and he has to go a lot more against 310, 315 pound guys.
The Ed Olivers of the world. That game's still imprinted on my brain. That was a tough outing.
Yeah, big time. But you start going to the outside and getting some more, outside linebackers that are in the 250s, 240s, 260s range, then you can handle that a little bit better. I agree. I think this offseason, the offensive line going to be extremely interesting with the Bakhtiari decision, Elton Jenkins being an unrestricted free agent, maybe moving some guys around. What do you do with Zach Tom? I'm sure they'll draft another handful of guys because that's just what they do.
They do.
It's going to be very interesting.
It was fun to watch yesterday. I mean, I know the thing is you're always kind of caveating it in your head, right? It's not like he's going against a murderer's row of pass rushers yesterday. We understand that. But it was fun to watch, how much time Rodgers had in the pocket when they were going up straight 5-man protection. It was classic, Rodgers standing back there, having his time to pick out whatever he wanted to do. And there's a classic pocket, and Zach Tom is the left tackle. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I don't care who you're going against. It's the NFL, and your quarterback was not sacked all day, was basically not hurried all day, and your offensive line, including your rookie left tackle, stood up. So, yeah, to me that was a lot of fun to watch. Before I let you get out of here, I want to mention something that Rodgers touched on in his post-game press conference, just because we always kind of joke about special teams, what have you. We just want competence, blah, blah, blah. And it kind of loops back in with what you were talking about in the sense of there's the fine line of guys wanting to make a play, right? And Aaron mentioned Keyshawn Nixon and how throughout his time in Green Bay, and I completely understand this, he has always been thinking during kickoffs while the ball's in the air, just kneel it down. Just don't take it out of the end zone. Just let it, don't try anything.
Yeah.
And he has been telling Keyshawn before each kickoff, man, bring it out. Bring it out. Because you do feel it. When Keyshawn's got the ball in his hand, the momentum, the energy, the desire to make a play, the electricity, I don't know what you call it, but he's got it, and you can feel it. And it is just fascinating to me because it goes back to a conversation I had with Mark Tauscher this past offseason where the mentality shift of just don't screw it up versus I'm going to make a play. And it's Ty Montgomery wanted to make a play against the Rams back in the day, and you saw how that turned out. But some guys actually do make a play consistently. And when you find one of them, it's so exciting. And they definitely found a guy like that in Keyshawn Nixon.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it was Matt LaFleur that said Keyshawn Nixon definitely doesn't lack for confidence. Like he does
No, in
not
any
lack for
way.
confidence.
Right.
Like it doesn't matter if he's playing slot corner, if he's a gunner on special teams or a flyer, I guess. Doesn't matter if he's kick returning. Like he's just got it. He's got the confidence. Awesome interception at the end. Just a ball that probably Fields was just trying to fill in at the end. It didn't really matter all that much, but still a nice pick. And he's just you need more Keyshawn Nixons on your team. And like, again, he's not a guy that's going to get awarded any Pro Bowls. He's not a guy that, maybe as a returner, like that, maybe he could get there as a returner, but
if he has a full year doing it, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. But still, you need guys like that. You need guys like Rudy Ford, who had a little bit of a tougher game this week, but you just need those guys who are willing to tackle, that don't lack confidence, that are going to do everything they can to make plays. And I've really enjoyed having both Rudy Ford and Keyshawn Nixon on the team this year.
Well, and a perfect example is Nixon is basically, I'm not even going to say at fault, but he's beat on that Fields touchdown, right? Like he's in a great position to make a play there. And Fields is just an excellent, amazing athlete and makes a play. Those guys are paid too. But you talk about a guy who doesn't let it affect him. I mean, Nixon comes back out for the rest of the game and plays lights out, and has a really good game. And that's what you need. And it's very much a Jair Alexander mentality where, yep, I got beat on that play. I'm going to go win this next play. And man, you see that from Nixon down in, down out, whether it's defense or special teams. And to your point, they need more of that across.
And really, really quick too, like with Nixon and Jair, to be fair to both those guys, even when they're making mistakes, right? Like Matt LaFleur has been very, very
making them 1,000 miles an hour.
Make him 1,000. Rudy Ford has made some mistakes. He's made him at 1,000 miles per hour. Same with Jair in this last game. Same with Nixon when he made his. You're going to make mistakes, make them fast, because what's going to happen in other plays of the game? You're going to recover a fumble if you're Rudy Ford. You're going to pick off a pass if you're Jair Alexander. You're going to pick off a pass if you're Keyshawn Nixon. If you're consistently playing that way with confidence and with speed, and you're reacting rather than thinking through things. Oh, should I do this? Should I do that? You're going to play a better brand of football overall. And there's going to be some hiccups. There's going to be some mistakes, but there's going to be some explosive plays out of it too. And if that's the way, and I agree with Matt LaFleur's mentality, but if that's the way that he wants him to play, well, then kudos for Ford and Nixon and Jair for playing that way.
100%. I mean, you're a reflection of your head coach, right?
Yep.
And if you're taking his message on board, that's what you want to see. You're a reflection of your head guy.
Totally agree.
I'm a reflection of Andy Herman because he covers the Packers like no one else. Second Day podcast and everything at Packer Report and everything on his Twitter account. Make sure you're consuming all his work. Andy, I can't thank you enough. We'll be doing this again in 2 weeks because there's no game next week because of the bye week. Obviously, I hope you do something fun with your off weekend, and I'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Can't wait. Thanks so much, Aaron.